It's that time of the week again, time when we look back at the many ways that the media covered themselves in glory, as Saagar likes to say, and as I love to also say. Joining us now for that discussion is host of the Katie Halper Show and co-host of the Useful Idiots Great Rolling Stone podcast with another friend, Matt Taibbi, Katie Halper herself. Great to see you, Katie.
Good to see you, Katie.
So, Katie, you have found yourself actually, and we have also found ourselves at the center of a media discussion that we wanted to focus on today. You were the first person to interview Tara Reade, who, of course, has made an accusation of sexual assault against the presumptive Democratic nominee, Joe Biden. And it has been very interesting and instructive to watch the way the media has just not covered this at all, the sort of intellectual pretzels that they've twisted themselves into to say, oh, this is totally different than other allegations that we took much more seriously. And in particular, you listened to this interview that the Pod Save guys did with Amanda Marcotte, who is one of these feminists who came out and said, oh, there's all kinds of red flags here, and handled this in a totally different way than she has any other sexual assault allegation. Just talk to us about your reaction to that interview.
Well, it was kind of stunning. So I actually interviewed Nathan Robinson, who wrote a great piece about this for Current Affairs. And right after we started debunking a bunch of the myths about Tara, I saw on Twitter that Amanda Marcotte had gone on Pod Save America, and unfortunately we didn't get to cover that, so I had to cover it on Twitter, and it was just stunning because I literally listened in real time, and I had to keep pausing, and it took me like 45 minutes or something to go through, I think, like 10 minutes of the podcast, and I didn't even get to all of it. So some of the things that she said were just totally inaccurate. And I think one of the main issues is that, I mean, there's so many, but they keep not talking to Tara. All these people don't interview Tara. And of course, if you want to listen to women, that's probably the first thing that you should be doing. So Amanda's thing, I have to say, of all the things that Amanda did in her original Salon piece, the thing that really disturbed me was that she used against Tara the fact that she had tweeted positive things about Joe Biden. And I realized this talking to Liza Featherstone, a great feminist leftist journalist. She pointed out that Harvey Weinstein, they tried to use that as an excuse to exonerate Harvey Weinstein. So Harvey Weinstein's lawyers actually wanted to submit into evidence the loving emails that Harvey Weinstein's victims had sent him. And that's just a very right-wing, sorry, Saagar, very right-wing rape-denying trope. Right? People will say, oh, this woman was raped by her boyfriend, but why didn't she break up with him the next day? Oh, this woman was assaulted by someone she worked with, but why did she bring him coffee on the job the next day? And so it's really, people are really revealing their true colors. And yeah, you can go on my Twitter. I can't even keep track of it, but there were so many things that she said throughout the interview that just weren't true, including that Tara said she spoke to many people at the time, and Amanda says she spoke to them, they didn't remember. She doesn't note that there were two people that she told at the time who she didn't talk to. And another thing the media is doing is that they're making it very uncomfortable for people to do these interviews because, Tara's brother is feeling kind of overwhelmed, and Tara's friend doesn't want to give her name, and they're kind of trying to use that against her too. Meanwhile, people have reported on stories without the person being named all the time. And this person's been, the friend has been vetted. All the reporters who talk to her know where she works. They know she's a real person. So that's just really disturbing. And, I mean, there's more. I don't know where you guys want to go in this.
They're happy to do, they're happy to report it whenever it's Brett Kavanaugh, but not this time around as usual. Let's also talk about this kind of spat that you got into with Joan Walsh after she did the same thing. I mean, she called you out by name, claiming you were, she called you a diehard Bernie Sanders supporter. It doesn't matter if that's true or not. You did it. Yeah, you did an interview with her, and Joan Walsh, she all but said that she doesn't believe the Tara Reade accusation, and yet we both independently found that story of her talking about what was like the heartbreak of Christine Blasey Ford. So, it's just, it's just complete hypocrisy. It's politically calculated hypocrisy that you pointed out there.
Right. And also, you guys talked about this, the way that the New York Times had to change something. They did a stealth edit of their piece where they said that they had found no patterns of this except for unwanted touching, kissing, and hugging. And then they deleted that and they didn't acknowledge it. And the editor was asked, an editor at the New York Times was asked about it, and his excuse was ridiculous. But what was so instructive was that he revealed openly that the Biden campaign had suggested that they change it. So this is a really interesting question because I am a Bernie Sanders supporter, but the entire mainstream media has a built-in anti-Sanders, pro-Biden bias at this point. And the difference is that they don't admit it. And we see it. They're so unaware of it, or they're so entitled about it that they even admit that they're taking editorial feedback from the Biden campaign, which is pretty stunning. Another thing that happened, I don't know if Rich McHugh talked about this, but did you talk about how the Washington Post had added in 2 words about Tara?
No.
She said she filed a police report, and it said that she was sexually assaulted. And Rich McHugh broke the story about the police report that she filed at Business Insider. Now, he noticed that in the Washington Post, they quoted the police report, and they said that they quoted it as saying she believed she had been sexually assaulted. And Rich McHugh freaked out. He was like, did I misreport the police report? Did I misquote it? No, he didn't. They just added those 2 words, again, to kind of suggest a lack of reliability on coming from Tara Reade. And, the other thing is that the New York Times, it took them 19 days to report on the story. And if you look at how they reported on Blasey Ford, it took them 4 days to report on it. So the idea that you're able to do an in-depth investigation, because that's one of the things that people are saying, they're kind of smearing both me and Ryan Grimm and suggesting that we didn't do our due diligence. But where were they when the New York Times and the Washington Post took 4 days instead of 19
right. Of course.
to look into this? And of course, it's no coincidence that Bernie Sanders has dropped out.
That was from a media perspective. I thought that was really notable as well, because the instant reaction and way of bearing the story is that no one credible had reported on it. That's what Alyssa Milano said.
Right.
And yet now that these credible reporters have reported on it, first of all, they've done it in such a blatantly biased and pro-Biden slant that it's just completely obvious with, as you point out, the New York Times even admitting that they changed their story at the request of the Biden campaign. But then Amanda Marcotte and the Pod Save interview is a perfect example. She got basic facts wrong. Joan Walsh got basic facts wrong. Several of these stories, the Washington Post, got basic facts wrong. And, you asked Tara about many of the questions and so-called red flags that they have raised. There's nothing of significance that has come out to undermine her credibility since you did that interview. So to my mind, all of the subsequent follow-on reporting after your interview has actually been very vindicating of you, because you and we also tried on this show to raise these issues that we knew would be brought out as a way to undermine her credibility. Those were all raised. And in fact, the only additional real piece that has come out since then has been one that backed Tara up. So the New York Times reporting revealed that, in fact, interns who she had been managing recalled that she was unexpectedly moved off of that position in a timing that matches her story. So actually, they have only sort of bolstered the story that Tara initially told you.
Exactly. She describes how, and it's it's a complicated story. Life is complicated, right? And obviously, people who are sexually harassing someone and sexually assaulting someone, they don't advertise it and they don't keep notes on it, right? So what happened was that she was sexually harassed and she verbally complained about this. Then she was sexually assaulted, and she didn't file a police report then, but she filed a harassment. She filled something out. But the point is, as you pointed out, 2 interns that the New York Times spoke with corroborate what she told me and she's told other people, which was that she was summarily stripped of certain duties, including supervising interns. And here's what's amazing. The fact that neither the New York Times nor the Washington Post has asked the Biden campaign, why did she have these duties taken away suddenly? The fact that they haven't said, is that true or not true? Will you comment on this or not comment on this? this again reveals what a myth it is that that people care about serious journalism and hard-hitting journalism and going after the facts. That's such a basic part of the story. And the fact that people are not only highlighting it, but not asking the Biden campaign to comment on this, I think reveals how invested they are in exonerating Biden and basically casting down on Tara. And I understand that someone who does genuinely think that Donald Trump is more destructive than Joe Biden, I understand that we're in this awkward position right now where we're being asked to choose between two people who have faced credible sexual assault allegations. But the problem is you can't take that out on Tara, and you should have listened to Tara's story when Bernie Sanders was still in the race. And I know I'm going to be called biased, and I do like Sanders, and I wanted him to be the nominee, but I'll tell you something. If Buttigieg or Klobuchar had been the only people in the race with Biden, I would have wanted people to look into this story, because I think not only do I think it's a moral problem to have to choose between two alleged sexual assaulters, but Biden is now an extremely, he's so many vulnerabilities, but he's such a vulnerable candidate. And the media coddling of him and Obama's intervention on his behalf really prevented kind of an organic vetting of him and an organic exposure of how he can't even finish his sentences.
I think
It's the people who actually admit to having, again, I didn't seek Tara out. I wasn't looking for a story to discredit Biden. But if your priority, as all the media, mainstream to liberal, basically says, if the priority is removing Trump from office, why wouldn't you look into a major vulnerability when there was another person in the race? And honestly, I understand, like normal civilians, I get it that they're upset that they're being asked to vote between these two people. But the people who I have no sympathy for and who should be named and shamed are the people who refuse to look into this story when there was another person in the race, and the feminists who refuse to do that.
Really great point, Katie.
And they're already trying to blame us for this, but if Biden loses, it's not on us, because we were sounding the alarms while there was another person in the race.
Right. Well, and if you're a journalist, a supposedly neutral journalist, you don't get to pick and choose when you do your job, right? Based on when it's convenient for you and because you're worried about giving the other side a talking point. That is not how this works.
Right.
Katie, very good work on this. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much for sharing your perspective today.
We'll see you later.
Okay.
We'll have more Rising for you after this.